is visible.
Okay, thank you. So let us start with the first one, which is fundamental of cellular systems, multiple access techniques, digital communication, or fading channels, equalization, and channel coding. This is a very vast topic. You can see we can write a book on this entire topic. So what I did here is that I've just taken a few glimpses of it. This entire presentation you can share with you, right? So it will not be restricted up to the presentation which is there. So I may be, because of the time, I may be shuffling the slide, right? So that later on you can just go through the slides in the depth. Right? So the table of content related to this sessions, you can just have the history of the radio communication, which is substantial into the cellular communication. There is mobile radio system, mobile telephone services, MTS, which we call improved mobile telephone services, and then the AMPS, that is the American Cellular Standards. Then you have a cellular radio and its concept. Then you have cell systems, which need to be cellular systems, which need to be designed. And what are the licensing methods, right? And frequency reuse concept, which is widely used in the GSM, and how we can plan the frequency reuse concept, and then the measurements as per the geographical condition which is there. Then how can we can use the distance to reuse ratio, right? And the call handoff methods which are there, hard handoff, soft handoff, right? And why do we need to have an hexagonal grid when we plan a cellular network? Then the AMPS technical specifications. Then when we go into the radio frequency channelizations, then what are the different channels apart from the voice channels, which are those other channels which are there? Right? Then one should have a complete understanding of the antennas and the radio frequency powers which we are going to radiate. Then wireless systems capacity, engineering, and subsequently about all these techniques and the technologies which are there. Right? So if you can see that AMPS, then GSM, then GPRS and AH, then CDMA IS-95, then CDMA 2000, then you have a wideband CDMA and so on. Right? So you can see largely the table of content is all about the journey right from the initial radio systems to the today's scenario of the wireless communication in the cellular domain. And yes, if you open any cell phone or any smartphone or any system which is deployed in the base stations or the mobile stations, you will find some different modulation techniques which is going on, right? Something related to that, the encoding and so on, digital encoding which is required, error correcting codes, right? So these are the inherent part of the entire technology, right? And when we talk about the wireless channel, then there are so many impediments which are there, right? Fading is one of them, right? And then you have different type of fading when you implement any kind of a system, right? And then you do just work upon different techniques which is there, right? You know, like equalization methods and so on. So this is how I have just penned down the table of content in a very sequential way, so that after this session you can also go through the presentation, and later on you can also get the complete insight of this wireless communication journey. So, so I will just give few of these things and directly jump into the MTS, which is there. Right? So in 1946, Bell Telephone Systems Lab inaugurated the first mobile systems, and they call it the mobile telephone services. So that is an MTS system. Right? So three channels in the range. There were just three channels, and it is 150 megahertz. Right? Were put into the services, and the frequency range was between the 35 and 44 megahertz. So it's something like they put on the highway systems to serve the Boston and the New York operating areas. So that was in 1947. So it starts from there. Right? So MPS transmission from radio tower is something like you have transmissions. Right? So MPS was supposed to be in that way. We're designed to cover a very large area. Right? So using a high power transmitter. So like you know that the Doordarshan and they put their antennas on the top and then they radiate it, right? So in order to reach the masses, right, to get benefits of that particular transmitted signal. So often the tower were placed at a geographically high location, right? So in 1949, what happened that the FCC authorized a non-wireline companies known as a radio common carrier. So RCC, used to call it as a RCC to provide the MPS, that is mobile telephony services. And then RCC is a wireless carrier that is not affiliated. So nowadays you know that price there in India, FCC is there. Right? So they are the authority is who provide the licenses. So this marked the birth of the competition in the telecommunication industry. So you can see that RCC will be just a starting point of this wireless communication journey. So later on, what happened that after 20 years, the system gets improved. So it is known as improved mobile telephone services. So it's all about the services. So improved mobile telephone services, right? So under the head of the MPS, right? So it was a fully duplex system. So eliminating the push to talk requirement of the older MPS. So MPS was just a push to talk kind of a mechanism, whereas IMPS was a full duplex system where you can communicate with each other. So a key advantage was that the user could dial directly into the PSTN number. So basically something like the user can dial from the mobile station to the landline line. Right? So high power stations to serve an entire city. So it's a huge diameter, right? So they used to cover it, right? So and the bandwidth was and the total channel requirement was the 30 kilohertz. So the band in which it was operating is from 30 to 300 megahertz, which comes under the VHF band, right? And and then the FCC also authorized the 25 kilohertz channels in the 450 megahertz band, which is nothing but the UHF band. Right? So in this way, it gets entered into the masses. After IMPS, the AMPS comes into the picture. That is American Cellular Standards. Right? So it's from the AT&T engineers. So decided to stretch the limited number of radio frequency available for mobile services and then scattering the low power transmitters throughout the metropolitan area. So they called it as the handing of calls from transmitter to transmitter. It's something like you have a big geographical. Previously, during the time of IMPS, well, they used to have a high power transmitter, right? So radiating the high power is not a good sign. So what they did in case of an AMPS is that they divided the entire geographical bigger size of the geographical area into small areas, and when the user moved from one particular geographical area to the next adjacent one, the phenomena which is known as is basically is the handing off the call from one transmitter to the another transmitter, right? As a customer move their vehicle, let's say that you are moving from one place to another place and on the highway, and suddenly there is a change in the transmitter from one cellular cell area to another one. So that mechanism technically it is known as handing off the transmitter to the transmitter. So this new technique would allow more customers, because once you have such kind of thing, you can just imagine that you can occupy more and more number of users. So if you have a narrow cell structure, you can accommodate more and more number of users, and in this way you can replicate, right? So this was supposed to be a very good business model. So in order to have more and more number of users. And this was the birth of advanced mobile phone services, which we call it as AMPS. So again, it was purely an analog cellular system. It was not digital. Right? So again, the FCC allotted UHF television channels in the 800 megahertz band, and uh, and that's how it goes all along. So after that, the cellular radios and its concept comes into picture. That is like FCC definition was created, like a high capacity land mobile system in which assigned group to geographically cell covering a cellular geographical service area. So somebody has to be there who can have a control of dividing all these things. So the district channels are capable of being reused in different cells within this services area. And this process is known as frequency reuse concept. So frequency use concept has been still very much popular in order to occupy more and more number of users. Right? So Leibniz definition was a system which uses radio transmission rather than physical wireline to provide a telephony service comparable to that of a regular business or residential telephone services. Right? So these are the two concepts which comes under the cellular concept. So after that, it moves to purely how the block diagram looks like, or on ground level, how the system works. You can see here, there are five main components in the cellular system, right? So which are those? Basically, there is a one base station, which is known as base trans receiver station. Let's say this base trans receiver station is nothing but you are standing somewhere, or you are right now wherever you are actually, your mobile phone is actually connected to the base station, which is a base trans receiver station, right? So so it is communicating with you continuously, right? And similarly, after certain distance, there will be another base station which is covering that particular area, right? So in this way, all these base stations they form a cluster, right? And there are different methods. One is known as seven cells cluster, another is known as five cells cluster. It depends on the geographical area. And all these base stations are actually connected to the fiber optic lines to the mobile switching center. So MSC is basically a mobile switching center, which takes care of all these base stations. And MSC is actually in the backbone. MSC is connected to the PSTN. So your telephone line, and in this way you get connected either on the mobile station, right, mobile phone, smartphone, or through the landline number as well. So there the frequency reuse concept comes very, and it is very important because as you can see that in, let's say the first cell is there, right, and the first to the third one, right? So you cannot have the same frequency reuse concept here. So you need to use it somewhere else. You have to leave one cell and then you have to move to the another cell. So the wireless system enables mobile communication through the use of various sophisticated two-way radio communication link, maintains the user's wireless telephony, the network, and the line line. So as you can see in the previous image, there is a mobile phone, there is a MSC, and there is a PSTN. So everyone is actually connected. And this is how the frequency reuse concept will come into the picture. We'll see in the later, we'll go into the mathematics. So the frequency reuse concept was separate the cellular system from all the preceding system, because previously in the, we talk about the MTS or AMTS, there was no as such frequency reuse concept. So AMTS has started the frequency reuse concept, right? So the major drawback with the previous mobile communication system was that because it was inefficient, you cannot increase the number of users, right, within the allocated radio spectrum. Right? And that was the, like, you can say, the blockage to the business of the wireless communication. And that's why the frequency reuse concept plays a very important role, right? Because they, as you know, that whether it's Airtel, Reliance, Vodafone, everyone, they pay a lot of money when they buy a spectrum, right? And how they can generate the business from that particular investment is that how efficiently they are implementing their wireless network, right? And that's possible due to the frequency reuse concept. And this is how you can see that. You can see that, let's say, consider this to be a city. The dark line, you can see that there is a 7-cell cluster. Right? The same 7 cell is repeated to the nearby adjacent. You can say that, right? You can consider that wherever right now you all are located at your place. Let's say somebody is in Maharashtra, somebody is in North, somebody is in East, somebody in South, Central, and you can see within your cities also that it has been cellular network has been on the ground level has been divided in this way. Right? That is nothing but a frequency response. Now, here again you can see that this 7 number, let's take an example of the center one first. Right? You'll find that each and every cell, let's say you pick up any number and you will find that the distance between the same number is actually the same. And that's why this is known as frequency reuse distance. Right? And that indicates that, let's say at the first one, you have uh, let's say you have 50 carriers, right? And on that 50 carriers, you can actually connect to 50 users, right? So the same set of frequency you can replicate in the next cluster where you have a geographical area and you name it as a one, right? Similarly, you can have the another one, right? Similarly, you can put the next 50 carrier frequencies over which you are going to communicate. You can pick it at the seventh cell. Similarly for the sixth, similarly for the five, because you maintain distance of frequency reuse. Right? So this phenomenon is very much popular of frequency reuse concept. You can see that the distance is maintained everywhere. Right? And this is the critical cellular radio principles and the core element of the cellular system. Right? So whenever you implement any cellular system, you have to maintain this particular distance. As far as the call handoff is concerned, it's a call handoff is something like you can see that you have an MSC at the center and these MSCs have been connected to the base station. So MSC is something like a master who takes care of everything, right? All the base stations. He knows everything, all the instructions, everything is coming from the respective base station. So he knows how many users are right now connecting, which user is actually moving to the another cluster, right? And when to hand off to the that particular base station so that the call should not get break, right? And there are two types of handoff. One is known as a hard handoff, and the second one is known as soft handoff. Right? You can see that why hexagon is used because it is something because even a circle can be used when you have the complete geographical area covers. Right? Because hexagon is the only shape which covers. It's something like a honey, right? So you know that how the bees are actually making their and how they are making their home. So how they do that? They are just connecting so that there is no space vacant. Similarly, you can see that here itself, when you put all the hexagons each, near to each other, you won't find any kind of a dead zone, right? So hexagon is the shape which actually removes the dead zone. So and that's why the hexagon is the most popular. Let's talk about the AMPS technical specification, right? In today's scenario, these specifications are very lower, but yes, as a technical side, we should know that what are the specifications of AMPS. Right? So it's a first generation from where the journey started, actually, right? So AMPS was the first generation deployed first in US and Canada, and then the cellular system which uses the frequency division multiplexes. So what they do is that what they have done is they have sliced the carrier frequency, that is nothing but the spectrum, into different frequency slots, right? In order to provide these services to the end user. And total spectrum was 40 megahertz, right? So the frequency on which the carrier frequency was supposed to be 800 megahertz. So AMPS offers how many duplex? It offers 832 full duplex channels with a data rate of 10 kilobits per second. So you have a bandwidth of 40 megahertz and you have 832 full duplex channels and with the data rate of very minimum, that is nothing but 10 kilobits per second. Because we know that on that time we just would like to have a mobile communication on it, right? No data, no high speed, nothing. We just would like to communicate. That was the first era of the mobile communication. So there are different channelization methods when you enter into the wireless communication zone. There is a paired channel spacing, control channels, channel sets. These are the different. When you do the pairing of the channel, then it is something like uplink and downlink frequency. When you communicate with when you make a call to any of your colleague, the call from your mobile phone, if you are making a call, it goes to the base station, and then the base station gets connected to whether that particular user is within the same geographical area, or if it is not, then he will pass on this information to MSC, and then MSC will take care whether the number is from the base, I mean the mobile number, or whether it has to be connected to the PSP, right? But yes, there is always a happening between the base station and the smartphone, right? And that pairing is nothing but your uplink and downlink. So this is how they segregated in case of an AMPS. You can see that you have a base station uh, very much straightforward, right? So you have you can see that this is the uplink and this is the downlink, and there is a difference in the uplink and the downlink. So base station is communicating with this frequencies and the downlink, as you can see, right? So this is a pairing of the mobile station and the uh, base station. And the control channel is basically also known as a paging channel. So when you switch on your mobile, so it will continuously be in touch with the nearby base. Right? So data signaling channel handles, right? So continuously there is a handling of the different signals, which makes sure that the mobile phone is in your range. So it always make a connection between the MSC and the mobile station to the base station. So it is used to administer the following tasks. So something like setup of a cellular call. So it is responsible to make a call, right? Both mobile oriented and the mobile. So it may be any call. Right? Locating the cellular phone. So where it is right now, you know that whenever you switch on your service provider, know that where your mobile phone is right now, right? Within that particular area. So connecting call information such as billing and traffic. So it's something like all the billing process which happens like monthly billing and all those things in the traffic and everything has to be taken care by control channel itself. And when you register your first time SIM and all those things has to be happen again through the control channel. So out of there, as we have seen in the previous few slides, that there are 416 total number of channels. So out of 416 total channels, the 21 channel pairs are in the control. So not all the 416 goes into the voice call. So basically, the 416 gets break down into 21 channels for the control. So this is how you form a set of each and every cluster. Right? So you have like if you have like n equal to 7, because as I've told you that there may be a 7-cell cluster, there may be a 5-cell cluster. It depends on which method we would like to deploy. Right? So if it is an n equal to 7 frequency plan, there are 21 channel sets. So with an average of 15 to 20 pair channel assigned per set. So every you can say that channel, every set is given to 21 channel set is given to every cell. Right? So you can just multiply 21 by 7 and that becomes your capacity of your cluster. Now moving from the channel sets, I mean all these frequencies concept, the next comes is that the antenna. Okay. Now comes the antenna part. So because all the base stations and everywhere we see that the antenna which is wirelessly communicated. So it is always with respect to the omnidirectional antenna, because as you can see that, and most of the antennas which has been used on the base stations are sectorizing. So you can see there are various type of, as you go on increasing the gain, you can see that from 0-degree gain, right, vertically, so it has been spread to the horizontal side, right? So basically, as you add on number of antenna element form of 1 by 4 of wavelength, then you can see that 3 dB, 3 dB, 3 dB gain you are adding, and then your energy has been it's something like a balloon, right? So when you press a balloon, so omnidirectional antenna is something like a 360-degree of a balloon. You press the antenna on the vertical side, what will happen? The air which is there, it will pass on the horizontal side, right? So as you go on increasing and pressing the balloon from the top, you will find that it gets flatter and flatter on the horizontal axis because somehow that energy has to be adjusted, right? So the same phenomena is related to the gain. Right? So when you add 3 dB, 3 dB, 3 dB gain, you can see that um, it becomes a 3 feet of a length, right? And you get a 9 dB of it. And again, if you want to increase the element by 12 feet, so automatically you get a 3 dB of a gain. So it's the ratio is in that terms. So cell splittings are dictated when the cells in a given areas are constantly at 80% of capacity. So the channel capacity plays a very important role. You can see that when we are not splitting, we have a very less area. And when we start splitting the area, we were able to increase the channel capacity. So once we introduce a new cell, you can see after split situation in the dotted line, you can see new cell is installed between two old cells. So the coverage area of two original cells and possibly surrounding cell is decreased automatically. So I will just take you to the all these terms are related to the channel capacity, right? So you can read in more detail later on. It is correlated with the antennas. So I will just show you of the parameters which is related to the realistic situation. So this situation you must have seen every day, right? It's something like a mobile tower, right? So it is a monopole tower, and you can see that there are two receiving antennas and one transmitting antennas, right? Which has been connected. So tower mounting of a directional transmitter and receiving antenna. So you can consider these receiver one and receiver two is nothing but a diversity receiving antenna. It's a surprise antenna, right? In certain area, they will receive the signal from that side. Similarly, there is a transmitting antenna. It will transmit the signal in a particular area. So this phenomena is actually known as you can see that this particular phenomena is something like a sectorizing. Every base station is having at least four antennas minimum, right? You can see the antennas which are something like a white kind of an antenna in a very directive way, right? So they are called as radon. So basically, radon is having a multiple elements of an antenna, right, to cover that particular antenna angle. So once you have four antenna, let's say, so every antenna in that respective and direction is covering 90 degree of it, right? So 90 degree in particular direction, second antenna is covering the rest of the 90 degree, third is covering the rest of the 90 degree in the horizontal plane, and the final one is covering the remaining 90 degree. So in this way, they are covering the 360-degree angle. You can easily figure out when you see any kind of need. So sometimes when they want to increase the area, they can even put more than four. They may have six. They may have five. So it depends on the requirement. It also depends on the number of users in that particular area. Right? So that is nothing but channel capacity. Now, now these are the antenna which we have seen previously. This one is basically a purely an antenna which is hard coded. It's something like antenna technology. We used to study type of an antenna, Yagi-Uda antenna, dish antenna, and all this. These are hard coded, purely hardware based, PCB based, or you can call it as antenna element based antennas. Right? So it's full of an electromagnetic radiation. So there is no, basically, there is no intelligence into the antenna. So when there is no intelligence in the antenna, right? So there is no intelligence in the antenna. That what does it mean? Basically, you cannot have a control on the beam, right? You are just radiating, right? Let's say there is a tower and they have a four radomes antenna connected, so it's just radiating. Its job is to radiate and receive. That's it, right? Whether the signal is there or not, the job to radiate and receive accordingly, right? But today's scenario, when there is a lot of frequency reviews and many more concepts which is already there, the antenna has to be, when we want to increase the channel capacity, when we want to improve the quality of service, when we want to improve the data rate, right? With this kind of a methodology, it is not possible. So what one has to do, one has to come up with a new technology in the antenna. So that antenna technology is nothing but smart antenna. So as you can see, there are two ways of doing it. So this smart antenna technology in today's 5G, it's a mandatory. 5G is not possible with the smart antenna, right? You must have heard about the word massive MIMO and all those things. So basically, it is nothing but a smart antenna, right? So you want that antenna to be controlled based on the situation, right? So based on the number of users, right? Unnecessarily, you don't want to radiate the energy. You want to radiate it when the user want to connect, and then again, how much you want to radiate it, that also you need to control. So that is nothing but RF power level. Okay. So how much you want to control it again is in your control when you are working in a smart antenna system. So there are two ways. One which is known as fixed beam network, or the fixed beam forming antenna design, and the second one is an adaptive area processing. So all this smart antenna technology is having an RF section with multiple of antenna, right? So if I can say, there may be 2048. So it depends on how much processing, how much investment would like to do, and definitely it is totally related to the number of users to whom you want to cater those services. So this all thing comes when you want to increase the throughput, when you want to increase the data rate, and at the same time you want to improve the quality of the service. Right? So this is a very important point, and in today's 5G or a 4G network system, smart antenna plays a very important. So how this works, basically, there are antenna. Let's say there are 8 antennas, right? All these antennas are connected to the RF front ending of respective channels. Let's say RF1, RF2, RF3, and so on up to 8. All these RF are again has been down converted or the up converted with the analog baseband systems. Okay? And then the analog baseband systems then gets connected with the digital processing FPGA based parallel processing architecture. Right? And in this way, you have a complete control over the beam. How much you want to radiate, you know where the user is. Accordingly, some user may be near to the tower, right? And somebody may be on the verge of the circle of that particular basis, right? So the one who is on the verge of that particular circle needs more energy than the one who is near to tower. So why to waste energy in giving the person who is near to tower? Right? You can just reduce the energy, right? You can reduce the radiated power. At the same time, the one who is away from the tower, on the verge of the, let's say, on the verge of the that particular cell, you can give more power. So you can improve the quality of the service by just playing around with these beam forming methods intelligently, because you have all the data, right? So, and once you start controlling the beam, then there is a lot of improvement in the entire system within the same specifications, right? And that's why in today's, when we talk about the speed, quality of service, right, downloading speed and everything, So this smart antenna technology plays a very important. Okay? In this, there are two ways. One is a fixed beam forming network, and the second one is adaptive. Adaptive is that you know where the user is, and you want to just give them that particular energy. Because as you can see, the radiation pattern of all these uh, comparatively, like fixed beam and adaptive. In fixed beam, you can see that they are orthogonal. All the beams are orthogonal. So at the same time, they are radiating is something like a radar, right? Whereas in case of an adaptive, you can see that whenever the user is connecting, you are giving him an energy rest. Otherwise, you are just switching it off, right? So you can save the power. Based on the situation, user can use any one of these. So if you just sum up all those things, you can just have a clear picture here itself. You started we started our journey from 1G, which is at 2 kilobits per second, because only the voice was services was the major concern, right? And then there is a uh, there is a higher in the specification in the 2G. You can say it's up to 64 kilobits per second, right? GSM or CDMA, and then we move towards the 3G, right? So 3G gives us the services of 2 megabits per second, right? And in 4G right now we are using, right? So it gives services up to 100 megabits per second. So this is basically 100 megabits per second is an ideal figure on paper. It's a specification, but when you take any services, you won't get 100 megabits per second. And when we're talking about the 5G and all those Internet of Things devices, they're going to wirelessly communicating, right? All the cellular networks, all connected, autonomous, right? So all these technologies which are there, right? So we can say that AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, digital twin. So all these technologies are only possible when you have a very high-speed data rate. Right? So in order to have a high-speed data rates, one should have the 5G network, and that's why uh, few years back, 5G was not that popular, but once this all these technologies have given a push to 5G because they realizes that if we want to go into this wave of AR, VR to machine learning, deep learning, augmented reality, and digital twin, Industry 4.0, IoT, industrial IoT, and many more. You name it, and you will find that in today's scenario, everything is wireless. Right? So that's why now the 5G is again now the center of attraction because they realize that if the 5G network is not there, then how we can meet this target of all these technologies, everything connected, and that's why now the companies are jumping into the 5G. But as you can see in the specification, there is a 360-degree change, a transformational change in the data rate. You can see that we are talking about, it's not about moving from 2 megabits per second to 100 megabits per second. We are talking about 100 megabits per second to 10 Gbps. Right? So 10 Gbps is something very big. Right? So with the existing infrastructure, it is not possible to achieve that particular thing. Right? So there is a transformational change in the background which is going to happen, whether it's talk about the MTS and whether it's talk about the BSC, everything. Right? You need a software defined networks, right? And many more things. At the same time, this particular 5G network should also complement to the 4G and so on. Right? So we cannot just leave the 4G and move it to the 5G. It should be again the upcoming technology should complement previous generation as well. Right? So these are the very big challenges. Yet achieving the 10 gigabits per second and so on. Plus the handshake should be compatible. So you can see that the companies like Qualcomm, right, and many more, and many more are coming up with the 5G devices because these devices will be altogether different. You need a different processing power because we are talking about something like 10 gigabits per second. It's something like a speed at the speed of a light kind of a thing. You click and it will get downloaded. It's something like that, right? So it will be a very beneficial. Now, as we have seen that all these have a backbone which is related to modulation schemes, right? And also in the wireless channels, different things. Let's see. You can have a look on this particular because every modulation is not compatible or not suited to every application. So based on the requirement, you have to choose which modulation technique to be used. So there are a lot of modulation techniques. A few of them I have just listed it out here, right? So whether it's a frequency shifting, whether it's a phase shifting, whether it's a continuous phase modulation, right? Amplitude phase modulations, non-constant envelope modulations, and so on. Right? We can again just spend just narrow it down, you will find that there are constant envelope modulation and the non-constant. Right? So continuous phase modulation is something like a GMSK, right? MSK, all these comes under those categories, whereas your quarter amplitude modulations, clamp, ASK, and all those things will come under the non-constant. So, so fading in the signal is a very well known, right? So when you have something like a transmission of the signal, so there will always be an impairment which is occurring between the transmitter and the receiver. So what are the difference? So in wireless radio channels, a signal from the transmitter may arrive at the receiving antenna to different paths. Absolutely. Right? So there is no something like a direct path. There might be a reflected path, there might be a deflected path, there might be a scattered path. Right? So at the end it gets entered into the receiving side. Right? And this phenomena is known as multipath signal. Right? So you have a one line of sight signal and you have multipath signal. So the multipath signal arrive at the receiver at slightly different delay. So when the signal, because see the shortest path is the line of sight, right? Without any diffraction or reflection and so on. So on. The signal from transmitter enters into the receiver, it goes straight away, which is nothing but the shortest path. Rest all the signals which are coming at the receiver side, they are coming at different time intervals. Let's say delay 1, delay 2, delay 3, and so on. Right? So this is nothing but the fading in the signal. So multipath will give rise to the fading in the signal. In the today's second half practical session, I will actually practically demonstrate to you and how the faded signal is going to look like when you transmit through the antenna. You can see that. Right? We used to study all those things in the mathematical model in any wireless communication book, but in the practical session, I can show you that how intersymbol interference occurs, how the shape of the signal gets changed, right? And also the other parameters which is related to the modulations, eye patterns, constellations, disturbing in the constellation, fading in the signals, right? All those effects we can practically visualize. So delay spread is one of the things which we have already discussed, right? So there is a Doppler shift, delay spread, coherent bandwidth, and because of that, you are not able to decode the signal. So your receiver will always get a false information. So you need to first at the first receiving point, we have to find out the Doppler spread, how much is the Doppler spread which is occurring, right? And you have to minus that Doppler shape with the character, right? And then you will be able to get the exact signal which you want. So channel characteristic is something like this. The fading you can see that. Right? So you have the normalized received power on the y-axis, and you have the excessive delay on the x-axis. So without any delay, you can get the higher power, right? And as you go on increasing the delay, your power down will get lower and lower. On the x-axis, you can see that as you go on increasing the delay, right? It means that definitely when the signal received at the receiver side, the power level will get down, and up to almost like a minus 20 degrees signal. So what are the different classifications of the channel? You can say there is a flat fading, right? There is a frequency selective fading. So these are the different type of fading signals which is occurring. There is a fast fading and the slow fading. So you have to mitigate this effect at the receiver side, because the beauty of the wireless communication is that the signal is invisible. When the signal gets radiated through the antenna, the signal is invisible. You are just receiving at the receiver side, and you just need to find out that what the signal is all about, right? And what are the different. First of all, you need to decode and you need to synchronize the signals, and then you need to demodulate it, right, at the RF side, and then you have to bring out the exact data which you would like to. Right? So if the fading is there, definitely at the synchronization level or at the eye pattern level, you will not be able to get what you want. Right? So under that situation, what you have to do is that you have to continuously work on that side, and you have to check whether you are able to decode it or not. And then you have to implement certain algorithms in order to remove that impairments. Let's say you may need to implement the equalization, right, and many more things which is occurring in the channel. So these are the two graphs which we can see straight away. One is the Rayleigh fading distribution graph, right, and the second is the Raison distribution density curve. This is comes under the fading channel. Now, moving to the digital modulation, which is occurring over the period of time with respect to the signal to noise ratio, you can see that the coherent is having the bandpass bipolar frequency shifting is having up to 40 dB, and non-coherent goes up to very higher. So that one is the BPSK, QPSK, or MS. Similarly, for the fast slow fading, you can again see almost on the same. This is the relay distribution curve for the Raison channel. You can see that as we go on, K values from 6 dB to 7 dB and so on, it goes up, and every signal rises. So it is with respect to the power. Similarly, for the frequency selective fading, right? So you can see that this is a relay line, and it is coming under this. Now, how you can remove this effect? So basically, if the fading in the channel is occurring, so you have to use the channel estimate. So you have to estimate the channel, do the correlation in the signal, and then recover the signal. So this method is very well known in the channel estimation. Equalization is there is a linear equalization method which is nothing but the tape delay line filter. It is equivalent to filter. So you have a samples which is coming in, right, at the receiver side. So after every delay, you multiply it with the constant filter coefficients, and then you add up, and then you get the desired samples, right? Effect which is occurring due to the delay in the signal, right? So intersignal interference can be overcome by using the equalization method. Right? So decision feedback equalizer method is also there. There is nothing but two time we can maintain, and the decision can be taken. So this one is the equalization method, and output of the equalization method goes to the decision feedback filter once again, and the finally the output. This is much more precise than the equalization. So channel. Right? So we just move on to the. So the topic which we have discussed right now is basically more toward the cellular, right? Cellular structures, generation, and then the wireless effects which were there. And the now what we are multi-carrier system. And if I compare with the single we are using 4G mobile and it covers the OFDM method, which is basically nothing but a multi-carrier modulation technique. So it is having a certain advantages over the single carrier modulation technique. So if I compare with single carriers are nothing but my ASK, FSK, OQPSK, QPSK, and so on, the plan and so on. These are single. So first again, then an OFD, right? So do we really need in what situation we require an OFD, right? And then we see that from where the OFDM originated, what are the different applications other than the cellular also, it has been widely used, right? And then we see the comparison between the FDM principles, benefits, and the drawback. And in the practice, the C7 and the platform. Basically, the so OFDM transmission and the ability to against frequency selective fading. Right? So as we have seen in the previous slide, there are certain right and symbol interference and quality of the service. So orthogonal frequency division multiplexes that is nothing but broadband wireless communication system. So removes the problem of the intersymbol interference in the fade. So and that's why it is very much popular. If you and you will find that in the mid 1960s, transmission and the frequency division. So frequency division multiplexing was there, right? It was used in systems. So it has been like CDMA, which was originated from similarly OFDM was from the military system. So it is largely based on the discrete Fourier transform and the fast. And nowadays it is fully fast Fourier. Some of them have also technique, but due to the hard uh, to scale up from 64 uh, so with the modulation technique, that so in the modern digital mobile, so the high than asymmetric digital subscriber link, which is an ADSL, and very high speed digital subscriber link, which is an VDSL. Right? So this were introduced on that. So DAB, which is a digital audio broadcasting. So all this platform based digital broadcasting, DAB, all uses the OFDM. Right? Similarly, for the digital video broadcasting in 1997, all your DVB, like your Tata Sky or DTH, right? All these are what? They are digital video broadcasting. So DVB, DVT is something for terrestrial video broadcasting, but uses the terrestrial broadcasting and digital. Terrestrial broadcasting. And which will, right, still line and the standard IEEE 800G, right? Similarly for the ultra wideband, and later on, uh, then it goes into the which is the more W, right? Already. So as we which was the wireless, case of a wireless, the food land comes under with the word the